Hello, and welcome to another episode of Biology from Jay's House. Today, we are going to be talking about the respiratory system again, but this time we're going to talk about how it cleans itself. So, I didn't collect homework, I didn't go over homework, but I know what you guys are thinking. Jay sure talks a lot, but hopefully you screamed, "What's the point?" I think this is slated for Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. Again, that might be wrong, and if that's wrong, put the correct date. But if that's right, it's my younger daughter's birthday, so happy birthday, Jaxie. And then let's come over here and write the point. And the point today is, how does the respiratory system clean itself? So, how does the respiratory system clean itself? Before we get into that, let's take a couple quick notes and then we're going to talk deeply about this. So, first, we skip a couple lines if you're doing paper notes. And the first note is mucus. What is mucus? Mucus is a viscous, V-I-S-C-O-U-S, viscous, sticky, and we'll talk about what viscous means in just a second, secretion. Produced by mucous membranes. And notice how mucus as part of a membrane is spelled differently than mucus as the stuff. Mucous membranes which it moistens and protects. And we're going to come and talk about this, but we have one more note. With each unit, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but with each unit, I'd like to talk about a nutrient that you can eat or drink to make that system work better. So for this system, we're going to talk about water. If you remember, for the muscular system, it was eat protein, and for the circulatory system, it was to eat iron, and this time it's water. Water is, hopefully you know, a clear liquid. If you don't know what water is, I'm a little concerned. That is required by all parts of the body for life and makes up 95% of mucus. So if I were you, I would pause the video right now, I would copy all these notes down, and then I would restart the video. So pause. Welcome back. I'm sure you did that. So we have a little bit to talk about. One thing I noticed is that mucus is made up of water. So whatever mucus does, and the reason we have mucus, water is super important to it. Only 5% of mucus is not water. So if you drink a lot of water, then your body will be able to produce the mucus it needs. So water not only is in the plasma of your blood and helps cells live, it also makes mucus. And that's the part that we often don't think about when we think about water. So that's water. I don't really want to talk too much more about water right now because I really want to focus on mucus. So I'm going to erase it. But again, you already paused the video and wrote it down. But I didn't. Then pause the video now, rewind it, and write it down. Oh, thanks. That's super helpful. Yeah, well, I'm helpful. Not. Okay. We have a couple terms we need to talk about. One is viscous. What does viscous mean? Viscous means thick liquid. So we would talk about how shampoo is viscous and water is not. If it is viscous, it pours slowly. So think ketchup, think honey, think shampoo. Stuff where when you first pour it, it doesn't come globbing out, but it slowly oozes out. We would call that a viscous substance. So viscous just means, another word might be thick, right? And secretion. What does secretion mean? That merely means that it's made by a cell. It's something that cells produce. So your cells, which are called mucous membranes, your cells make this thick, sticky liquid. Now, if you don't believe me that it's thick and sticky, what you do is you take these two fingers and jam them up your nose, then slowly pull them out and see what it's like. Actually, don't do that. I have two tiny kids at home, and I get to deal with what happens all the time. So don't. Keep your fingers out of your nose. That's a good idea. Keep your fingers out of your nose. But that's it. Mucus is both thick and it's sticky. And the cells that make it, it moistens and protects. Moistens I get because it's made out of 95% water, so I understand why mucus would keep things wet since it has so much water in it, but protects, we're going to have to talk about that. And we will right now. Okay, so remember, we're talking about the respiratory system cleaning itself. So how do you clean your lungs? How do you clean your trachea? How do you clean all these bits? And, well, let me think. How do I clean the rest of my body? I know. I use soap. So I hope that everybody remembered in the shower today to open their mouth and breathe in soap. Just kidding. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. We don't clean our respiratory system the same way we clean our bodies. We don't use soap. Okay, so there's my wonderful drawing of a human head. Okay, let's see. Well, how do I clean my teeth? Oh, that's easy. I brush them. So I hope you remembered this morning when you were brushing your teeth that you got your lung brush out and you scrubbed your lungs. No, we don't do that either. That's nuts. That's crazy talk. Right? Now, we do brush our teeth, and you should brush your tongue also. So we do brush that. And we don't brush our nose. Hopefully you're not putting brushes up your nose. A man can dream. But what if we get all the way down to things like the trachea? And remember, trachea is nothing more than a sciencey term for your windpipe. It's the part of your throat where you breathe, where air goes. How do you clean that? Right? And if we remember, it goes to your bronchi, and that's where if you get bronchitis, itis means an inflammation. So if you get sick and you get bronchitis, that means these branches here that connect your trachea to your lungs, these branches are inflamed. And that means you're right on the door of pneumonia. Pneumonia is an issue with your lungs. So clearly, if you are sick here in your bronchi, you're real close to getting sick here in your lungs. So you have two lungs, you have a left and right lung. And how do you clean them? Well, you don't brush them. You hopefully don't put soap in them. That's a terrible idea. And the answer is you don't. You don't clean them at all. Your body cleans it for you. That's awesome. Sweet. Now, how does it do it? It uses really sticky stuff called mucus. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen fly paper, but fly paper is this long strip of super sticky glue. So it's just a piece of paper. It's usually hung. And what happens is it's sticky glue on a piece of paper, and it usually has kind of a nice smell to it. Ooh, it smells so pretty. Well, it doesn't smell pretty to us, but it does to flies. And what flies do is they go, hey, and as they're buzzing around, they zzz, ooh, that smells good, and they land on it. And then what happens? Well, that's kind of the raw part. They're stuck there until they die. Yep, that's right. They buzz all around and they stick onto the fly paper and then they starve to death. Kind of a terrible way to go. Luckily, they don't make human paper, so hopefully that will never happen to you. But that's what happens. So what happens is if we think of a fly as, let's say, a dirt particle or something that would be that we would inhale, and this would be a particle of dirt, a particle of dust, a particle of smoke. If we could find a sticky substance that it could stick to, then we could keep it from going deep into our lungs. Because if we remember correctly, if at the very end of our windpipe, so as we breathe in air, right? So the air goes in through our nose and mouth, goes down our trachea, goes down our bronchi, into our lungs. And inside of our lungs, if we remember correctly, are smaller and smaller branches called bronchioles, and those branch off and get smaller and smaller, and those branch off and get smaller and smaller. Those branch off and get smaller. It gets so small. It gets so teeny, and each one gets smaller and smaller. At the very end, you have your alveoli. So let's take a bigger look at the alveoli. So let's say that this bronchiole right here is this bronchiole. So this and this are the exact same thing. This is way down deep inside your lungs. And at the end of it is, let's say, a big old alveoli. Oblong alveoli, not super well drawn, but we'll take it. This isn't alveoli. Those are the grapes at the very, very end. So this is where air, when we breathe in, it goes through our nose and bronchi and bronchioles and all, it comes in here, and then if we didn't absorb it, it would exit again. So this is the end of the road for air. Things like nitrogen, right? Nitrogen makes up about 80% of the air. Nitrogen comes in, goes all the way down, enters our alveoli, and then goes right back out, and we never use it. It doesn't change anything in our body. So nitrogen totally just goes into our alveoli and then goes right back out. Goes in and goes out. Unaffected. So the key here is that we have to keep this clean. And the reason we have to keep this clean, let me change where I wrote alveoli, is because if we remember, this is where we actually breathe. This is where the blood vessel comes in, specifically which blood vessel? Artery? No, that's going too fast. Vein? No, that's going too fast. Capillary. That's where the capillary comes in. And remember, we have our mailman, and our mailman comes in the capillary, gets real close to the alveoli, and that's where the oxygen we breathe in comes in, and the blood drops off the carbon dioxide, picks up the oxygen, heads on out. Thanks, lung, you're the greatest. Well, specifically alveoli. And then we breathe out the carbon dioxide. And this needs to stay, this space between the alveoli and the capillary, that needs to be as tiny as possible so that the gases, so that oxygen can come into the blood and carbon dioxide can come out of the blood. And for those to switch between our blood and the capillary and the air that we breathe, this space between them has to be as tiny as humanly possible and thus as clean. If we put a big layer of dirt here, let's say I painted the inside of my alveoli with a thick, sticky, nasty substance. I don't know, let's just call it tar. Then, when the postman, the blood, comes in with its carbon dioxide, when the oxygen tries to get through, it can't get through the tar. Come on, I just want to jump into the blood. And the carbon dioxide can't get in either, can't get out. Oh, man. And so what ends up happening is the blood doesn't drop off its carbon dioxide, and we breathe out perfectly good oxygen. That's why you shouldn't smoke, in case you haven't figured it out yet. That's what smoking does, is it lines your alveoli with tar, and it keeps the air, the oxygen, from being able to get into your blood, and it keeps the carbon dioxide from being able to get out of your blood. And so you never get that gas exchange. And that's why, if you've ever been around people who have smoked a lot, they take huge gulps of air, big wheezy gulps of air, and they still can't oxygenate their blood because the oxygen just can't get through the tar. But that could also be dirt, that could be dust, that could be smoke, that could be a whole bunch of things. So how do we keep that from happening? Number one, don't smoke. Don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke, and don't smoke. Number two is, well, I am going to breathe in smoke, right? When I go running, and I live in the city, when I go running, I run right by traffic. I'm breathing in smoke. It's not smoke I want to breathe in, but I'm going to breathe it in. I'm going to breathe in dust. I'm going to breathe in dirt. I'm going to breathe in pollen. I'm going to breathe in all these pollutants and contaminants, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's happening. I can't stop that. So how do I get the dirt, the dust? How do I get all the nasty stuff that I breathe in? How do I get that out? So if we think of each of these dots as dirt, dust, smoke, disease, like all of those things, how do we get them out? Well, same way we deal with flies. Flies are going to happen. Flies exist. They're going to fly around the universe, and they might come into your restaurant or your home, and what you can do is, well, get something super sticky and stick to it. And that's what mucus does. What mucus does is it's just flypaper inside your respiratory system. So when I breathe in dirt and dust and all this kind of stuff, it flows by and then it gets stuck to the flypaper that is mucus. Well, okay, that's cool. But just out of curiosity, what if I never change the flypaper? I mean, I don't know much, but my guess is you leave this out for a couple weeks, months, years, and, you know, it's going to be pretty disgusting pretty fast. So I totally get that dust, dirt, disease, all the terrible stuff I breathe in will stick to it. Now what? Yay, now the problem is I got disgusting, sticky stuff in my life. That seems just as terrible. Well, the answer is get rid of it. Okay, how do I do that? Well, you find a place in your body that can destroy it. If only there was a place in our body that's really good at destroying terrible stuff. I don't know, with like maybe acid. Oh, the stomach. Hey, isn't the stomach just a big vat of acid? Yeah, that's totally what it is. So if we look at a human and let's say that's their chin, and that's their neck, just so you can kind of see, that's a terrible K. Oh man, looks like Ned's. Neck, actually spelled weird, and that's their shoulder, right? And there's the back of their head. And wow, they have some head skull shape issues. Okay, if we think of this, and we look specifically at the trachea, which again is your windpipe, right? And the bronchi and the lungs, right? How do we clean this? Well, the answer actually is mucus, but what matters is when you get to here. There's this thing called the epiglottis. Now, I'm not really going to talk a ton about the epiglottis, but at the kind of top of your neck is this flap, and it's that flap that decides whether you go to the lungs or whether you go to the stomach. So I'm going to draw. Can you even see that? No, that's bad color. I'm going to draw in a different color. Your stomach. And what's in the stomach? Acid. So this is your stomach. It's full of acid, right? And the tube for it goes right behind your trachea. And I can prove this. If you take your hands and you put them on the front of your throat and you just go, ha, and then wiggle back and forth by grabbing the front of your throat, ah, you can feel that you are interacting with your trachea. The trachea, and if you kind of feel up and down your throat, you can actually feel some of the cartilage, which are, again, if we remember back to the beginning of this unit, cartilage are little rings of hard material that keep this open so that it stays open like that, so it stays open all day. Doesn't matter if I lay down or stand up or whatever. If there weren't cartilage around your trachea, then when you lay down, it would close. That would be bad. If I went to sleep and suddenly my trachea closed, that'd be a really bad day. So we need rings of cartilage that are going to keep that wide open. And you can actually feel it if you feel the front of your throat. So behind it is a thing called the esophagus, and that's off to the stomach. So here's what happens. Above the epiglottis, because it's the epiglottis that decides, hey, are you off to lungs or are you off to the stomach? It's the epiglottis that chooses which route you're going to take. So above the epiglottis, so if you're at, let's say, the back of the throat, back of the mouth, everything up here, what ends up happening is the mucus goes down, and then the epiglottis chooses for it to not go into the trachea, but the mucus goes down through the esophagus into the stomach. So all day long, like it or not, down the back of your throat, snot is dripping into your stomach all day, every day. But it has to. That's the flypaper. Remember, that's where all the dirt, the disease, the grime. This is why you shouldn't pick your nose and eat your boogers, by the way, because they're disgusting. All that stuff that you breathe in that's not supposed to be in your body gets stuck to the mucus, and then the mucus carries it into the stomach where the acid kills it. So you have an acid bath in your stomach. Let's use it, and that's what we do. We take the disgusting mucus, the disgusting flypaper of our body, and just drop it into the stomach nonstop. Okay, that's well and good, but what about, I don't know, my lungs? And the answer is they're these little hairs. They're called cilia. You don't need to know that. But there's these little hairs that constantly wave up, and they line all of this. So what ends up happening is now the mucus, that's an M, actually gets pushed up. and that's from both sides. And that's all the way from the alveoli, up the bronchioles, up the bronchi, up the trachea, to the epiglottis, where they do a U-turn